Well, hello, Katie.
Hello.
We are still in Minnesota, and today we're in St. Peter, Minnesota. What are we doing and where are we at?
We are currently at the campus of Gustavus Adolphus College, and we are here for the John Denver Festival.
That's right. As crazy as it sounds, there is a Young John Denver Festival here in town, and we're going to tell you why. Daze with Jordan the Lion and Katie begins right now. So why is John Denver Festival in Minnesota? Okay, he was not born here. He did not die here. He fell in love here. The story of John Denver is that he was an army brat, or he was a military brat. His father was a flight teacher. And so they moved all over the place, from living in Roswell, New Mexico, to Japan, to Arizona, to Montgomery, Alabama. And John, at the age of 11, fell in love with music and was given a guitar by his grandmother. So he started playing that guitar because he was a loner and just never really, he saw himself as an emotional guy, whereas his father was not emotional. So they kind of butt heads a lot. And eventually John just decided he wanted to give everything into music. And so he moved to Los Angeles, started playing the hootenannies at Ledbetter's and the Troubadour, had some success, and even had a daily spot playing at Ledbetter's in Westwood. He would end up signing people up. He would do 20-minute shows every night. He said he was kind of living large. He was making $100 a week. They gave him a place to stay. He was playing music and people liked him. So we're at the student union here. What ended up happening was John, while he was in Los Angeles, he took off and started touring. And when he came back, the entire vibe of Los Angeles had changed. The whole music scene and all the people that were into him before were no longer into him. So he ended up joining the Chad Mitchell Trio, which was a popular, they were a folk group, but they were politically based. They talked about the war in Vietnam. And so he ended up finding, as he listened to music, that he would get better if he played with them. So he joined the group, and this was his profession. He was actually touring all across the country with these guys, and they got booked to come play here at little Gustavus Adolphus College. And he said they played their set and then they wandered over to the student union, which is right here. And he said when they went inside, there were a bunch of different sororities and fraternities trying to raise money and doing little skits and things like that. So he said he started watching them, trying to figure out what they were doing, but he couldn't figure out what the story was. But he said he noticed there was this girl that kept walking out with like leader cards, almost like a ring girl. And she would kind of introduce what was happening next in between things. And so he said he just kind of became smitten by her, kept watching her and wanted to know about her. And then he said one of the students that had seen him play with the Chad Mitchell Trio across campus went up to him and said, "Hey, can we give you a guitar? Can you play a couple of songs?" And he said, so he agreed to. And when he started playing the songs inside of here, Annie, who was the girl that had been walking out with the leader cards, went and sat directly in front of him and just swooned and watched him. And he said he immediately fell in love with her at first sight, started singing all the songs to her. And then after he was done, he said that her friends came up to him and said, "Nobody's ever made her stop talking like that." And so he knew that there was something special. He started talking to her, and he said all I could think of was, maybe when can I see her again? And since this was a college, he figured, well, maybe she lives somewhere else, that we're going to play and that I can see her again. Because they were here in, he said, what would have been the spring of 1966. And he said when he said that to her, she took it as an insult. He said, where are you from? Where do you live? And she said, "I'm local. I'm from right here." And he said, "Oh, that's too bad." So you could see on his side what he meant, and you can see how she would have interpreted it. But he said she basically stopped talking to him right there. And then he came back through in the fall to Mankato, And he said with this same group, Chad Mitchell Trio, and when they were doing sound checks, some of the people that were there were at this show and said, you know, that they had seen him. And he said, do you know Annie Martell? How can I get in touch with her? And they gave John her phone number that night. He called her before the show and she said, I'll come to your show if you come pick me up. So that's what happened, is that he drove from Mankato back to St. Peter, picked her up, took her to the show, and he said they had a connection. Then he said a couple of days later, she ended up coming to another one of his shows and then another, and they kept bonding. And then she came to one when he was playing Minneapolis and brought her father's car and said that she was going to go join her parents who were up in Minneapolis the next day for the weekend because they were big football fans. And so her and John decided to travel together. And as he said, while her parents were watching Sunday football, Annie and I were using their hotel room, and he fell in love with her. And what a whirlwind it must be, because this is a guy who's making his living on the road. He basically said he didn't have a strong connection to his parents at the time. So even though they were living in Florida, every time the Chad Mitchell Trio would be touring, he would be on the road. But when he wouldn't, he would just come back here to her. And so her family ended up loving him. And he said that they invited him to spend Christmas, the next Christmas, and he put together models and stuff with her brother, and the family became really close. And so it got to a point where every time he was on the road, he said he would just be thinking about her. And so he decided, I'm going to propose. So we're going to take you to where he did that and how he did that. I love thinking about those days, 66, 67, thinking about him walking around here singing those songs. How cool that would have been to have gone to this little college in Minnesota and have this story later on in life. Oh yeah, I used to see John Denver in his early days walking around my campus singing songs. And people online have said, oh, he wrote Leaving on a Jet Plane there. He didn't. He said himself he wrote it while he was in Washington, D.C., or Washington, to play the cellar door. And he said that Annie's song he actually wrote while on a ski lift in 1974. So he wasn't singing that around here either. Probably not a bad gig. I mean, he was 23 years old. And he said when you got booked for this circuit, you weren't quite big enough to play fairs. So you would do campuses, and they were, of course, closed during the summer. So you never toured in the summer. But he said you basically got paid in, they would give you a dorm room to stay in. They would give you food, and they would pay you a little bit of money. Like he said, he could get like $500, but you had to basically provide your own band and your own instruments, and anything that you would need, you had to bring it with you. All right, we're heading out to where John ended up proposing. So you can tell something's going on out here at the old property. This was the old Holiday House Supper Club. This was the restaurant that Annie's parents owned. They were really well respected in this town, kind of known as wealthy. And John even said when he met Annie that she never had any confidence issues. She was always kind of a well-known, well-liked, popular, from a popular family in town. But right over there, that's the remnants of what was the supper club. Basically what happened was he decided he wanted to marry Annie, and he was on the road and called and proposed to her, and she said no. So they have surveillance and everything. I'm not trying to trespass or anything. I'm just trying to show a little bit of the property. But he said that she said no. And so back then, he said, in those days, I was all or nothing, you know. So I didn't know what to do, and I kind of quit talking to her. And then one of her friends reached out and said, she really misses you, you know, try again. And so he said he proposed again, and she said yes over the phone. So he went to Tiffany's in New York, where he was at the time, bought her a ring. And then when he got back here, he brought her to her parents' supper club, which was right over there, the Holiday House. And he said when she slipped away to go to the bathroom, he took the ring and put it in her sparkling burgundy drink that she had. And when she went to drink it, obviously she saw the ring and said yes. And so they were. He said he met her in 1966 when they had their, their little dates and their little conversations together. He said it didn't take long for him just to be hooked. At 23 years old, he knew, even though he was the kind of guy who knew his life was going to be on the road, he just said he knew that he felt like at 23, everybody expected you to kind of get a foundation and start thinking seriously. And he said, when I did that, all I could think about was Annie Martell. And so he was happy to marry her. We'll actually come back here after I show you where they got married. And when we go see where they got married, we actually found a framed picture from their wedding of different photos, and we'll show you some of those while we're there. Well, here is the First Lutheran Church that in 1967, John Denver, who was actually born Henry John Duchendorf, they had, of course, changed his name professionally to John Denver, but he and Annie Martell, the local girl, ended up getting married here with a packed house, as he said. He said he had his grandma and grandpa and some of his relatives, and that was the grandma who actually gave him his first acoustic guitar. He had the Chad Mitchell Trio guys that he was touring the road with here. And then, of course, all of her friends and family, and her father, who, of course, was a big restaurateur and knew everybody in town. So it was quite a big deal. So hopefully we can show you the inside where they got married and then where they went off to have the reception. So they were very nice and said, yeah, we could go in and check it out. Actually, the person working here was like, are you sure? When did they get married? And we said 1967. He said, well, this was built in 1963, so this was it. Now, he also said that this is a really renowned room for sound, and that people come here from all over the place to record vocal groups and different things. So you can imagine, with John's beautiful voice, he could have probably sang We All Know Is Leaving on a Jet Plane in this room. He would have written that song by then. So they would have got married right up here. Wow, that is cool. Now, how do we know for sure that he got married here? He wrote a book. He wrote a book and he talks about it. He talks about how he met Annie and their wedding here and how she turned him down a couple of times.
He even described it in his own words as, we got married in a beautiful modern Lutheran church. So
yeah.
Even just looking at this and from the architecture on the outside, it definitely would match that description, because this is absolutely gorgeous with the stained glass through the top. And you can even kind of hear in your own voice how sound would be so beautiful in here.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a life they led from here. I mean, he said that, I was able to find all kinds of reports from people that were here at the time, living in the town and going to the school, saying they could remember him all over the place with his guitar, singing songs, various places around town. So knowing the sound and how popular this is, that's pretty cool to see where his friends and family would have witnessed and where he would have said, I do. Now, he was not when you read his book, he was not somebody who growing up had a lot of confidence. He was a loner. So once he started hitting the road and people saw that he could sing songs, that's really the only way he ever had any communication with women. So in his book, he talks about how it was in a gig in Houston when he was first with a woman ever, but it was when he was with the Chad Mitchell Trio and came through here that when he met Annie, he just absolutely fell head over heels with her. I mean, it was crazy because he says that he was trying to ask her where she was from, and he was meaning it because he knew they wouldn't be back in this town for a while. And she said, I'm a local girl, I'm from here. And he said, oh, that's unfortunate. And he said, I think she took it the wrong way because she quit talking to me. We this was something that we'd talked about doing, and we found out they were having a festival. To John, we said, what better time to come and see where his roots here were.
Yeah, this is very cool.
So we're back up where the Holiday House Supper Club was, and this is where they had the reception. After they got married and, you know, said I do in the church and took all their photos and everything, they came up and had a big giant soiree, a big party reception and everything here. And then John said they immediately woke up early the next day, flew to Los Angeles. He had bought a Mustang when he was performing in Westwood, and so they flew to pick up his car and then drove it to Tempe, where Annie's grandparents had a trailer. All right, so I actually just saw somebody drive out, and they said, you know, why don't you go up and knock on the door? They're nice people, you know, just ask them, tell them what you want to do. So I went up there, and this was definitely the Holiday House. It was kind of cool because it's a family who is running foster care. So this is now providing homes for children. And what they told me was that when Annie's father ended up, well, he owned this place for a long time and just kept adding and adding on to it and adding on to it. So it's like had 13 or so different add-ons, and they said, and eventually it just kind of fell into disrepair. And the woman who lives there said, my dad bought it in foreclosure and we're slowly trying to get it back in order. Now, what's interesting is, I said, well, I'm a John Denver fan. I heard he had his reception, everything here. And she said, yeah, right there. And right where we were standing, right in front, she said, there used to be a pond there. And she said, you see that rock formation? She said, that's in their wedding photos from the reception. Now, I asked if I could take a photo, and she said no, because she said, we're just really trying to, you know, put things back together, and I'm embarrassed the way it looks right now. So, you know, she said, you know, maybe another time, once we get it all fixed up and everything, I might be open to it. But she did show me the photo of them standing right in front of that formation that I can share with you right here. And I just thought, you know, that's so cool that they are giving it a second life. Instead of it being torn down, they're actually trying to build it up, and they're adding rooms onto it for their family members right now, which I thought was super awesome. And yeah, the John Denver legacy lives on. She said, I'll tell you one of the crazy things. So we have a photo of John inside what would be our living room when it was a restaurant. And she said, we put it up on the wall, and she goes, like, one day we're looking at it, all of a sudden it just falls on its own. So she said, we've had kind of eerie instances and everything, but she said, this is definitely indeed the property where he proposed to her and where they had the reception.
Well, it's easy to see how they could have fallen in love with the area, because shortly after they were married, they were in Chicago for a very short amount of time, but ultimately they decided to come back to the Twin Cities area in a small suburb called Edina, and that's where they called home for about 3 years until he started to hit it big solo.
And also what's kind of fascinating is that when we were looking online just trying to figure out, like, how deep is his connection to Minnesota, we found that there were several people in this town that had all kinds of stories of seeing him singing, leaving on a jet plane in this area, like at this school. He would often be visiting Annie, walking around with his guitar, and would just start singing songs. And that's basically what helped his career, is that when Chad Mitchell Trio ended up breaking up, he had already written, publisher changed it to Leaving on a Jet Plane, had Peter, Paul, and Mary record it, and it became a hit.
One hit,
yeah, and it became a hit. So when the Chad Mitchell Trio ended up just breaking up in '69, he could actually get booked on these college campuses on his own, because he had written a hit song and he had been in the Chad Mitchell Trio. So he continued just touring as he had, but making a name for John Denver while living in Minnesota. To my knowledge, nobody else does a John Denver festival. I don't know of one. You would think that, you know, Aspen or somewhere in Colorado, the Rocky Mountains, they would have something for him. But as far as I could find, this is the only place that really pays homage to him. And they call it Young John Denver Days. So I think they're going to play a lot of the music. He basically, the moment right after he ended up leaving the Chad Mitchell Trio, when they all broke it up, he got a record deal right away, and it was for 2 albums a year for 2 years, paying him $7,000 an album. So that's what they lived on. And we're going to go see some of those songs performed here.
These ones are 30.
Oh, the country roads one? Okay.
So our next musician is here today because of John Denver. John Denver was one of her idols that she looked up to. She had a chance to meet him, and I hope that we hear a story about meeting John Denver. And last year she called me after the first John Denver's Fest, and she said, hey, what can I do to be part of it? And I said, all you have to do to ask. Because last year, you folks told us you wanted more food trucks and more John Denver. So that's what we're doing. We're bringing you more John Denver. So let's give a huge welcome to Mankato local Lisa Murphy, the singing cowgirl.
I've been performing for about 47 years now, and the last 10 years have been full-time. And when I did it, the first year I did 500 shows in 3 states. And right now I tell my friends I'm kind of semi-retired, and I'm doing about 420 shows right now a year. So. And I love performing for people. I'm just like John in that way. John loved performing for people, making people happy, making people smile, and I love doing the same thing. So I'm glad you folks are out here today. So nice to see all your smiling faces, and I love it. I love it. I want to tell you a story about this first song. It's called Leaving on a Jet Plane, but that's not the title that John originally had for the song. In fact, it went on one album as the song that John titled it, Oh Babe, I Hate to Go. And his producer said, you know what, John? That is not a good title for that song. And John is going, what? What do you mean? You're going to make me change it? And he said, yes, you have to change it. So he changed it to Leaving on a Jet Plane. So, and you know what? John always said, limit yourself to the choruses of the song and let me do the verses. You know what? You guys can do everything, okay? I'd love it if you guys do it because I love interaction in my show. So the more I hear you guys sing, the more crazy I'm going to get, all right? So let's go.
See how crazy she gets.
Oh, babe, I hate to go. Every place I go, I'll think of you. Every song I sing, I'll sing for you. And close your eyes, and I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the times I won't have to say. Sing it with me. Kiss me and smile for me. You'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. He said, I don't think I could ever get enough attention. And I said, yours truly. I said, you know, I started entertaining rather young. When I was 3 years old, I remember standing in front of our TV set at home and dancing and singing for everybody. And my mom and dad would go, get away from the TV set right now. And I'd still do it anyway. So I guess I've had entertainer in my blood pretty much my whole life. But I love performing, and I hope you guys enjoy the show today. He wrote a lot of songs that were performed at weddings. And I actually performed this next song at a few weddings myself. And some of you might know it. It's called Follow Me. Anybody remember Follow Me?
Yeah.
Right. Anybody have it at their wedding? Raise your hand. To be so in love with you and so alone. Follow me where I go. Follow me up and down, all the way and all around. Take my hand and say you'll follow me. To be there when I can talk to you, and there's no one else around. Take my hand and I will follow you. Thank you. I can be handy fixing the fuse.
He's doing hopscotch.
Order to
Oh, and just shot a 3-pointer.
I should tell you my story about how I met John a few times over the years. Anybody know Jim Martell, who had the Holiday House just down the road here a little ways?
Hey, we went there
Guys,
today.
There's only a few hands out here. I can't believe there's not more. Okay. Well, Jim Martell and I were really good friends for almost 40 years. And he was kind of like a dad to me, and he thought I was his daughter as well. And I told him, I said, you know what? You don't need another daughter. You already have 3, and you have 1 son. You don't need another daughter. He goes, I don't care. He goes, I want you as my daughter. I said, okay, I can accept that. And I was 14 when I met him initially, and I met him at the Holiday House. And, you know, I told him, I said, I don't know why you did all those really cool things for me all those years. And you know what he said? He said, you know what, Lisa? He said, you and I have something very much in common. And I said, what is that? And he said, you and I dearly loved John. And I said, well, you got that right. So I met him out at the Mankato Airport in front of his Learjet on a couple of occasions. And I actually got to go in his Learjet as well, which was kind of cool, because I had aviation class when I was in high school. 18 years old, I had aviation.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, I went out one day and his pilots had brought his plane into Mankato. And I was out there and I said, well, that's a really cool plane. And his pilot said to me, they said, well, would you like to come in and take a look? And I said, yeah, I'd love it. So I went in. I'm looking around, and I said, this is cool, really cool. And he goes, well, you want to see the cockpit? I said, yeah, I'd like to see the cockpit. So he opened up the door and let me in the cockpit. And before he shut the door, he looked at me and he said, yeah, but don't take off. Because he knew that I knew what all the gauges were because I had aviation class. So it was kind of funny. I said, no, I'm good. We're going to just leave it in Mankato here. And he goes, all right, that's good. But yeah, I got to meet John, and he was such a great guy. Very generous, very caring man. I don't know how many of you guys out here actually got to meet him. Is there a lot of people? Yeah? Ma'am, what did you think? Was it great? All right, thumbs up. I love it. I can't believe there's not more people that haven't met him out here, because we're in Annie's town, you know. So.
Well, Katie, what did you think of the festival? They're going to be doing this all day, and I'm just concerned about copyright, so we can't film everything. But did you have fun checking out some of John's history here?
Absolutely. It's kind of a cool little town, and it's nice that they are remembering John because it was a fun little slice of his life.
All right, there's a lot more entertainment, but we really can't share a ton with you because they're copywritten songs. So you're going to have to come see it for yourself. But I wanted to share that I, on Marketplace, recently found an autographed John Denver record. So I actually have that. And we're going to call it a day from the great city of St. Peter, Minnesota. John Denver made his mark here, and they remember him. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.